1 week ago, we talked to a Texas A&M energy expert about the fall of oil prices and the range of issues that could pop up, good and bad, as a result. Whether the boom is busting might still be in question, but there certainly has been a lot of interest in drilling in our area, including in College Station, where a pair of wells were recently permitted in the city limits. It's been a while since that had happened, and it had been since 1991 that the city's oil and gas ordinance was looked at, and last night the city council approved some amendments. In the old ordinance, there were no mentions of disposal wells, which take in fluid from the oil and gas drilling, or putting sites in 100-year floodplains, or sump pits. Those are now prohibited. Insurance requirements were increased and added, and noise regulations were put into the approved proposal. The big point for a lot of folks who showed up last night at City Hall was how close any oil or gas drilling can come to certain structures. And nothing will be allowed within 600 feet of churches, parks, residents, public buildings, cemeteries, retail businesses, commercial, medical, dental, or assembly locations. The residences, as you might expect, was an item on many people's minds. We'll have more on that in a moment. Nothing will be allowed within 1,000 feet of public or private schools, hospitals, child or adult care facilities, or group residences. And there is also a road maintenance agreement that requires the companies to keep roads they use in good condition or repair them if they fall into disrepair. Deputy City Manager Chuck Gilman explained that the city only has a partial scope on all of this.
The items that we try to address in this ordinance are related to nuisances such as noise, light, sound attenuation, ensuring our streets stay clean, ensuring our roadway infrastructure is maintained and that integrity is there for years to come. The items that the staff and the city do not have control over are the well design, the portions of the well that are below grade, the casing, the thickness, the cementing. That's all up to the Railroad Commission. They're the ones that review the applications. They're the ones that issue the permits. The city does not get into the means and methods of the driller or the operator. Things related to air and air quality, those are established by TCEQ. So there are a lot of other agencies that come into play whenever you consider oil and gas drilling, exploration, and operation. So we're just one piece of that puzzle.
People with many views on the oil and gas industry spoke. The former agriculture commissioner of the state, Todd Staples, was at the meeting in his new role as the president of the Texas Oil and Gas Association, and he favored the deal. Kevin Burgess is a chemistry professor at Texas A&M and a College Station resident, and he favors no fracking.
Modern fracking technology with horizontal drilling and slick water chemistry produces far more oil and gas per well and far more pollution per well than anything we've seen in College Station up until last year. It produces pollutants like hydrogen sulfide gas, which is toxic because of these reasons at a level of 10 parts per million in a 10-minute exposure. And if that burst is not properly contained, a passerby 50 feet away from a burst of hydrogen sulfide could die. People at 600 feet from a burst of hydrogen sulfide would get very sick, and people living near a rig that intermittently emitted levels of hydrogen sulfide would slowly be poisoned. Ozone is more toxic even than hydrogen sulfide. Ozone attacks the respiratory system, and it's generated by heavy plant and heavy trucks, like the type of heavy plant and heavy trucks that are involved in fracking. Fracking contributes to the ozone levels significantly. The EPA tries to restrict the ozone levels to within 75 parts per billion, not million, 75 parts per billion, and they failed to do that in San Antonio because of the fracking activity around that city.
And the more wells, he explained, that are in the city, ozone levels will rise. And also Burgess said that no one in College Station has studied the ozone level in that city limits, and then the ozone level related to the number of wells that are predicted. And obviously there's going to be heavy traffic and other potential polluters in Burgess's mind that would be involved. So residents question the setback distances in a variety of ways. Obie O'Brien with the Apache Corporation was one of those who was there, and that company has a number of wells in the area.
We're in favor of this ordinance. Is it what we would have written? No. It's going to be an experiment for us, just like it is for everybody else, but we're willing to take a chance with it, see if we can make it work. If we can't, then we'll come back and try something else. But the truth is that the science is there. 600-foot setbacks are the answer to balancing development with people's concerns about health, safety, and welfare. We've done it everywhere else we've been. We can do it here. We urge you to vote for the proposal as the staff has laid out, and let us go to work, see if we can make it work. Thanks.
And in the end, the ordinance did pass unanimously. There were some proposed changes to the distances, those setbacks, that were shot down, so it maintains at that 601,000 level that we discussed earlier. Tonight at 6 o'clock on News 3, more reaction and insight into the late meeting last night, including some more expert opinion from over at Texas A&M. It was the late hours of Thursday night when things finally wrapped up at City Hall.